22 years in Intel?
Yes, 22 years in Intel.
We have seen always that logo on our laptops. As the world evolves towards AI, towards data, how is Intel redefining itself?
Most of us in the past have been rewarded by intelligence. You don't need that anymore because the smartest person around you is probably going to be your device or your AI agent.
What should we do as a country to be ahead of this race?
The size and the scale of digitization in this country, I don't think exists anywhere else. So the foundation is the strongest for us to innovate. Now, drawback is,
how is India going to afford building that infrastructure that's needed to win the AI race?
if we follow the race that US does or the West does, I think we are comparing the wrong things in the world. I would always say challenge the current thinking. Now, you'll ask, what's the point of this data center? The most important part is the whole concept of sovereignty, because the biggest resource that we have is data. Talent in India, I think, is at a disruption point.
What skill set should these students focus on that makes them differentiated?
If super intelligence is real, means even the next inventions won't be done by human. $25 billion of capital for a market and for a technology that you've not invented yet. Now, if this is not the most risky business, there's no other business like this.
Should we be worried?
Yeah, absolutely be worried.
Finally, the fireside chat that we all have been waiting for. Yeah? Now, we've been super excited to host you.
Okay.
As they have been sending questions.
Yeah.
They've been sending questions to us also, in addition to sending it to you. And I have a big list of questions that I'm going to ask you, right? So today I have with me Mr. Santhosh. He needs no introduction. He's the VP and MD of Intel India, handles the operations strategy, and is the guru of AI. So all the AI questions that you have been asking us, I think we're going to ask that to Santhosh today, right? So formally welcoming you, Mr. Santhosh.
Thank you.
Right. And I'm going to straight go deep into your earlier career and earlier journey. So if you could just walk us through of your initial years of career, that'll be super helpful for us to build on it.
Okay, wonderful. So first of all, I'm excited to be here, and I think coming to an institution that is thinking so differently and also meeting all of you is like, highly energizing for me, okay? I'm not 20 years old, but I still feel like I'm 20 years old. So,
you look like you're 20 years old.
So it's always exciting to be here. So my early journey was, I've always known what I've kind of liked. We were all forced to go to engineering in our days. We had engineering and we had medicine. Medicine just took too long. And engineering was like, okay, 4 years, check, tick that box and move on. So I did engineering, and I always knew that I wanted to get into business or anything to do with general management is what I always enjoyed. Like doing things, managing things is something that I was always excited about. So I kind of knew that I had to go do this, but I did engineering. And post my engineering, I did my MBA, and then I quickly got into corporate India at that point in time. And at that point in time, one of the best companies to go join was Wipro, and that's where I started my early career journey.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was largely in Wipro, and it was primarily in sales. Okay. So
nothing to do with engineering in the first stint.
Nothing to do with engineering, but engineering, I think one of the things engineering teaches you is logical thinking, right? Structured approach to problem solving. And in my opinion, I think that's the part that engineering helped me, right? I may not remember, all the machine design and all those things that we did those days, but I think what really made sense was just the structured logical thinking approach that helped.
And now 22 years in Intel?
Yes, 22 years in Intel. Yeah.
So for all of us, Intel has been this chip company, right? That we have seen always that logo on our laptops, right? But tell us, as the world evolves towards AI, towards data, how is Intel redefining itself? Yeah,
the beauty of working at Intel is that you're always at the forefront of what's changing in technology. Like when I started 22 years ago, I started in India, And at that point in time, they were trying to expand beyond the big cities. So my first job was not in a big city. It was in a small state in Kerala. And it was in Cochin, just to go expand presence in India. That's where I started 20 years ago. And at that point in time, the only computers were largely desktop computers, right? And desktop computers and server infrastructure was the primary compute. There was no, phones. There was no, laptops that you see. Nothing of those sorts existed. But if you go look at it, I think Intel's key point is that we have always been, the change factor. Like many of you won't know that USB was invented at Intel. Like today you'll go and plug in any device, but USB was an Intel invention. All the Wi-Fi that you use today, like all your laptops are connected to it, is again, Wi-Fi is an Intel invention. That's there. And we launched the first laptops that was called Centrino, that primarily, showed everybody that you can use without wires, right? And I'm sure your generation won't even remember that we had to do dial-ups at one point in time. So I just think that's the beauty of being an Intel. We are always at that forefront of change. And I've probably seen so many changes in my 2 decades that is just fascinating, right? You're in front and you're starting to see how the market evolves.
And let's talk about the change in the next decade.
Yeah.
Right? Now, AI is the talk of the town, especially for Intel. I'm sure it is the thing to go after. So now, as Intel thinks about the AI race, how are you seeing the new inventions coming up? What is it going after? Is it going to be the chip company, the GPU company, or how is it shaping up?
I think AI is definitely one of those tipping points that's going to impact all our lives. Okay, and the way I think you got to think about it is that there was the industrial age, and the industrial age automated lots of process through machinery, right? So you had big machines that came and automated factories, and then you had the industrial age, and then we got onto the information age, which was when primarily information was easily available in your fingertips, and that's what internet did, right? So if you look at it, earlier days, the newspaper used to come to Delhi. By the time it reached Varanasi, it was 2 days later, okay? Yeah. So the information that smaller city had to have took 2 days to go reach. But with internet, I think information was just instantly available wherever you are. Now we're getting into an age where it's the intelligence age, which means you're not just going to have information, but you're going to have intelligence around you, right? Just imagine when you have thousands of IQ around you.
Yeah.
And that time, your system of education, the way you're starting to train, the way you're starting to learn, is not to go achieve intelligence, is to go say, what would you do with intelligence around you, right? So that is a big, change in whatever profession that you're going into, right? Because most of us in the past have been rewarded by intelligence. Hey, I'm the smartest person, so I come and teach you. And I know better than you, therefore I come and teach you. You don't need that anymore, because the smartest person around you is probably going to be your device or your AI agent that's going to always tell you things. And that's a whole shift in the way. So like this fireside chat, 5 years from now, will be an AI agent talking to you. And maybe it's the best trained Masters Union agent that listen to all of these experts that you bring in every time. And maybe that's the
summation of everybody.
Correct, right? And maybe it's the best conversation you would have that would be very different. So it's going to be a big change in no matter what business, what industry, what function you're going to be in.
Okay, so I feel the world, we are at a very pivotal moment where the world is being reconstructed, if I can say that, right? So early 2000s, when the internet boom was there, knowledge became a commodity.
Yeah.
Now, I think the intelligence is becoming a commodity, which we never thought of, right? Like today, you can have companies where you have probably 10 human employees and 1,000 of AI agent employees working for you. And if I put India in that context, what should we do as a country to be ahead of this race? Right? We're known for technology. We've always been known for the CTOs that we've had across the MNCs. But what can India do differently this time?
Yeah, I think the I came back after 2 decades of being outside to India because, most people will think like, why do you move from Singapore to Bangalore? Okay, because no one does the move from Singapore to Bangalore because sometimes, traveling from Singapore to Bangalore is faster than Delhi to Bangalore.
Yes.
Okay, just from door-to-door timing point of view. And it's not one of those easy moves that you would make because Singapore is such a nice, perfect bubble. But I think post the pandemic, I came to India and I was like, oh my God, this place is going to take off. And when you hit the streets of Bangalore, you may not feel that way, but I've lived in 6 different countries, and I came back to India not because I had to, I came in post the pandemic, and the size and the scale of digitization in this country, I don't think exists anywhere else, okay? So the foundation is the strongest for us to innovate in an AI world. So I think to me, that was the most compelling part because when I grew up in India, I told you there were 2 careers, everything else was a taboo. And even if you did science and commerce and stuff like that, they would be like, okay, something's wrong with this person and he didn't get into the engineer or doctor, therefore something's wrong. But the India today is very different. I think saying you're in a startup, saying you're building something is not bad, right? It's not a taboo anymore. Like my son, who's probably your age, is doing cinema and theater now, right? And I still try to explain to my dad, actually, you know what? And he's like, after that, what happens? When will he get a job? I said, there's no job for him, right? It's just going to be, this is the life that he's going to go lead, where he's going to do gigs all his life, and he has to find a way to feed himself, right? So that kind of change that you're starting to see is a huge opportunity for a society that is so digital, right? That is so young, right, and has buzzing with so many different ideas. So to me, I think that's the biggest benefit and strength that India has. Now, drawback is that we're never material in the world. I mean, think about any large product companies that came out of India. Hardly. Okay. Think about technology markets. Okay, let's just take technology. We are probably 2% of the world's data centers are available in India. So small. Take any big company, take Google, take Microsoft, take Intel, pick your favorite large company. We would be low single digits of their global revenue. Low single digits. So we are not material other than soaps and toothpaste and all that because 1 billion people are brushing teeth, so it obviously will consume a lot. But anything of material change to the world, we are not material yet, okay? Because we have our challenges, right? There's 250 million people living with less than $2 in a day. So that is a challenge that we have. So I think India's path is really to be material in the technology world, right? And material not from a talent point of view, that's proven, that's done. Okay, because we have all the Infosys and the Wipros and all of those outsourcing and GCCs. That is a pool that people are going to come in. Materiality from a product and an innovation point of view is what I think India needs, right? And pick any product. Even if you take the basics of toothpaste and soaps, we used to always go and import and get it done. Till Mysore Sandal soap came and started building, soaps out of India. So I think even fundamental products, India can stand, build the best in class, and start to make its mark. And I think that's where I think materiality becomes important.
No, Santhosh, you're right. But I think India does have a lot of constraints. And I have some data here, right? You mentioned that India has only 3% of the world's servers.
Yeah.
Right? Even if we triple our capacity, we'll be at 4% of the US.
Yeah.
Right? So my question to you, and if I look at the cost, if you have to build a 1 gigawatt GPU data center, it'll cost you some $10 billion, right? How is India going to afford, when you're talking about majority of the population, poverty line, all of that, how is India going to afford building that infrastructure that's needed to win the AI race?
Yeah, I think the key is, a gigawatt data center today is about $50 billion if you're going and building it with GPU, right? And if we follow the race that US does or the West does, I think we are comparing the wrong things in the world, right? Like our AI race need not be, I just need to go build large, massive infrastructure, and till the time I build that infrastructure, I can't innovate, right? Or I can't do anything about it, is probably an approach that's not going to lead us anywhere, right? Because I mean, just look at some of the announcements. And 5 companies in the US have already spent $300 billion plus on capital infrastructure this year. We have spent about $3 billion so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not
As
even
a
a
country.
comparison as a country. So it's not even a comparison of what can get spent. So I think we got to have a different race. Our race need not be, okay, I'm going to build these large language models and I'm going to do a breakthrough and I'm going to beat an OpenAI, or I'm going to beat some of those large companies that are just pouring in money for super intelligence that's around the corner.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the race that we need to be in. And I'm not saying that Sarvam and some of the other companies doing Indic models are wrong. I think it's great that some of them are doing it. But I think our bigger opportunity is how do we make AI at scale? Right? How do we build applications at scale? How do we use smaller models? How do you use your computer and phone and start to build, AI at the edge? That innovation, I mean, DeepSeek was a great classic example that China did, where at the end of the day, they were constrained with GPUs because of all the sanctions. And they had to go build, a model based on the most frugal way of building a model. So I think that frugality is the most important element that we have as a society. And I think that us trying to, use that frugality as the key hook, and then try and make AI at scale is probably our biggest advantage that we can do.
And I think you've mentioned it in the talks that you've done. You said that India can probably use the 950,000 cell towers that we have as the cloud.
Yeah.
Right? So could you tangibly elaborate more on how we can use the principles of frugality? And India has that, right? Chandrayaan, for example, was built in 1/4, 1/10 or 1/4 the cost of NASA's mission, right? So we do have that as a principle as a country. But my question is, tactically, can you explain some of the examples like the cell towers or anything else on which the students can think and say, okay, probably this is the direction an entrepreneur should take?
Yeah, I would always say challenge the current thinking, right? I mean, the key part that you look at is, I mean, if you go to Singapore, you'll see this thing called electronic road pricing, ERP, that was a system. And it was these big towers that they installed, and they had these card readers in the car. That card reader costed you $100, and then the towers were more expensive. What did India do? We used FASTag, right? What was it was so simple. It was RFID, and you zip through it, and then you get it done. Now they even tried to remove that and use cameras to identify your number plate, right? So that frugality of the solution focuses on the solution, not the tools that go and make the solution. Right? I think that's the approach that I think we need to. And I think the concept that I was asking is like, hey, if there's 950,000 cell phone towers, each cell phone tower has a fiber, each cell phone tower has compute, has storage, then why do you need these big, large data centers? Why can't a group of cell phone towers become the data center? Right? And why do you need everything to be in one place and power all of these big infrastructures, right? So it's just the way you start to think of that solution and saying, can a group of cell phone towers start to behave like a data center that we need? Now, you'll ask, what's the point of this data center, right? Why do we need this data center? Why can't all the data centers be somewhere else?
Yeah.
The most important part is the whole concept of sovereignty, right? Because the biggest resource that we have is data. Like all of you are putting in petabytes of data and information in, and you're digitally native generation. You've grown up with phones or used technology and internet from the time that you came into this world. So your usage of data is extremely high. Now that data is the most important resource for AI. And we produce 20% of the world's data, right? But we don't keep the 20% of the world's data in the country, right? All of that data is outside, all of that data is getting processed somewhere else, and that's not an asset anymore. So if you develop frugal solutions that uses our data and starts to build, starts to solve problems that are affecting our society with that local data, then I think that we'll have much more room to go innovate than someone else doing it.
And you mentioned about having the assets, right? I think one of the asset that India has and always has had for a long number of years is our talent, especially in the field of technology. right? So while we may lag behind on the infrastructure and we can cover it up with frugality, I think we have talent that's abundant. Yeah. How do you see India leveraging its talent in AI for getting ahead and probably also becoming the center of AI for the world?
Yeah. So let's break down the talent equation. Okay. In the talent lens, there are two aspects in my opinion. One is the value aspects of our society, right? Like we work hard, we are respectful, we are good colleagues, there's a whole value system, and then we are competitive because every time, life is a race, you got to go get a mark, that race we are very familiar with. And so there's the soft aspects of talent that is really good, right? That's what made the Sundar Pichais and Satyas of the world, because the soft aspect of how they are as people is very important. Now, the academic aspect of what India is in an education is what is going to get questioned now. Okay? Why do I say that? Because our entire academic system is built on who is most intelligent, how do I get to the top with marks, how do I get to be better than someone else who's next to me. Like, you were paid to be more intelligent, your system of evaluation was paid to, so-called academic intelligence, right, was the key tipping point of success, right? That's why, when we had to write the entrance exams to get into the IITs and all of that, if you didn't crack all those key things, then you were not sent there, right? You went somewhere else. But it was just that intelligence was measured one way, right? Now, the whole important part is that concept of intelligence is changing now. Like, I don't need, I'll have a PhD level math or a genius level chemistry expert or the most leading dermatologist available on my phone, right? And that's the intelligence I'm going to have. So if I keep measuring you on that same benchmark, it's not going to work anymore, okay? So talent in India, I think, is at a disruption point, because the talent that had those great soft skills, that is required, okay? We got to strengthen the soft skill aspect of it. But the talent on the other side, which is like, okay, I'm going to compete on intelligence, is the one that needs to start to change and evolve. So the biggest strength that we have can also be
the biggest weakness
at some point in time, if we go the same way, right? If we go start learning in the same mode. So that's the one that I think we got to be very careful about.
So let's dig deep a little bit here, right? Because that's important for the students who are going to graduate in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
You're mentioning that as intelligence becomes a commodity, the whole India talent being super intelligent, kind of that weightage goes down, right? Because now you have AI agents writing codes for you and all of that. What skill set should these students focus on that makes them differentiated and would make them a wanted talent in the industry 3-4 years down the line?
I would probably put that in one word. I think if you have the right attitude, everything else can be figured out, okay?
Yeah.
And attitude is often kind of underrated, right? Like, it's like, and what do I mean by attitude? Now you'll come back and say, okay, what does attitude mean? I am always showing up well, I have good attitude. I think attitude is a culmination of few key things, right? The first one is that how you show up. Like, do you show up with your shoulders down, like the world is falling on your feet, or it's like, it's like, oh God, I feel drained? Or do you show up saying, you know what, whatever the situation is, I'm going to make the best out of it, right? Optimism, I feel, is underrated. I think optimism is a good thing to have. I'm not saying don't be pessimistic or question, but how you show up is an important aspect of how you would be, right? Second is, we were discussing this before, the degree of change in your world is going to be far, far more than what we have ever seen. Like I was saying, like, we were lucky. I had like 10 years of change, and I have 20 years of employment with one company. Like, those things will be unheard of.
Yeah.
Okay, it's already unheard of now. Like, my parents worked 40 years with one company. It was called public sector then. Okay, you never got fired, but you had to do the same thing over and over again. And but they loved it, right? And they had 4 decades. I had 2 decades. and it's just going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. So the degree of change and how you deal with change, I think is the second part that attitude is going to evolve, right? And then the last piece of it is like, and I know when attitude, the important aspect is how fast can you learn? How fast can you learn, and equally fast can you unlearn? Like if you get stuck to that thing that my thinking is the best thinking and I can't have anybody else and my voice is the loudest, and I'm sure in your debates you'll have a few instances where you passionately argue on something, but the fact that you can drop your learning and then go pick up something new and you can adapt is going to be really important. So I think that's the skill that's going to differ. If you have these three ingredients, I think anything that the world throws at us, because honestly, I don't think any of us can sit and tell you, okay, 1 year from now, here's how the world's going to be. If super intelligence is real, means even the next inventions won't be done by human, right? The next inventions, whatever those inventions are, is going to be done by an AI. And I don't think we're ready for a world. Like imagine the next new drug discovery that is done by AI, the next new material that is done by an AI, the next new chip that is going to be done by an AI.
I think it's like creating a species that is more intelligent than you.
That intelligence is already there.
Correct.
But the question is like, what happens when it's in the thousands, and what do you do then?
So before we move to the student questions, I think let's change gears a little bit and talk about Intel.
Yeah.
Right. Today, when people think of GPUs and AI, I think the first thing that comes to mind is NVIDIA.
Yeah.
And I want to understand how is Intel positioned in the space, and how are you shipping Intel in this race?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that everyone needs to get, understand about semiconductors and why are they so important, right? Like what's the magic of semiconductors? And you'll say, yeah, it's a chip, it's a small thing, it's there in my phone, it's there everywhere else.
Yeah.
But that chip is one of the hardest things in the planet to go design and build. Okay? If humanly anything needs to be built, I think building the semiconductors is the hardest problem in the world to go solve. Okay? Now, why do I say that? A chip is like, it's this small size, and every time a chip gets better, what you're trying to do is add more transistors on that chip. Okay, it's a simple equation. The more transistors you add, the more powerful the chip is going to become. Okay, and a transistor is very simple. It just connects, electrons from one side to the other side. That's it. It's a simple part that's there. Now the key is that small part where you put transistors, you can't increase the size of that. I can't make my chip bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, I have to make that smaller and smaller and smaller because your devices are getting smaller and smaller, but you have to add more and more transistors if you want to do more and more compute, right? And that's why I think the chip is fascinating. Now the first chip in '69 that was built had less than 2,000 transistors. Okay, today I think your leading laptop which you're using probably would be, at least 1.5 to 2 billion transistors on a single chip. Right, and by the end of 2030, you would have 1 trillion transistors on a single chip. Okay, and the reason you'll ask is, okay, what's the problem? We can just keep adding more and more transistors on it, right?
Yeah.
Why is it a big pain to add transistors? Because every time you add a transistor, heat generated increases exponentially. We have a heat problem. We have a physics problem because the size is small. And then when you add more transistors, heat is going to get generated. In fact, 1 trillion transistors, if you don't rethink how it's going to work, you'll have more heat than the surface of the sun on a single chip. So it is a fascinating technology problem, and that's why there's something called as Moore's law. If you've heard of it, every 18 months, the cost of the number of transistors will double in a chip. That's continued for all the 5 decades that's there. Okay. Now the key question is, what's Intel's key approach? So Intel's key approach is to go crack Moore's law. Year after year after year, when people say, no, you can't do it, physics cannot allow, because physics won't allow at some point, right? Because the chip is only this much, how do you keep adding more and more and more? There'll be no space at the end of the day, right? So Intel's is like the custodian of Moore's law. Like, how do you keep inventing? So for us, I think our biggest core competence is to go build semiconductors that are at the leading edge. Means every every time that you see the most leading AI chip, Intel wants to be. Every time you want to buy a most leading laptop, Intel wants to be in it. The most leading chips is what we are after. Okay, and then obviously into quantum and the other next evolution of computing that comes in. Now, each of these chips are crazy to go manufacture. 10 years before, a chip plant used to cost you $5-6 billion. Today, if you want to build a leading edge semiconductor plant, you need $25 billion to $30 billion to build. Okay, and it takes 5 years to go build it.
Yeah.
It's not even like a year's time that you can go build. 5 years to build a plant, and $25 billion of capital for a market and for a technology that you've not invented yet, that you don't know yet. Now, if this is not the most risky business, there's no other business like this, because you're inventing as you build. Okay, and that's why semiconductors are a hard problem. Now, NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, pick your favorite all chip vendors, all of them design products but gets manufactured in one place in the world, which is called TSMC. Okay, Taiwan Semiconductor is the one that manufactures most of it. Intel's the only Western foundry or Western manufacturer that exists today. Okay, so that's why it is such an important, element for society. It's the only alternative in leading edge semiconductors today in the world, and getting Intel right is super important for everybody. Okay, and that's the pursuit that we are on.
And I've heard that Intel is working on something called IDM 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that for our students?
Yeah, I think it was a change in the strategy where earlier we had factories and we had products, and we used our factories to build our products. Largely, we never opened up our factories for anybody else. But I think the way AI is moving and the way the world is changing, we are now saying, okay, hey, you know what? Our factories are not just for our products. Now, AMD can come and build, NVIDIA can come and build, Apple can come and build. So you open up your factories for others to come and build in your products. Okay? So why is that important? Because as I told you, one manufacturer in the world is never good. Okay? The world needs a choice, and that's why this gives you a second option for the world to go build leading edge products. And that's what IDM in a simple way is.
Understood. And why, there are other chip companies anyway, but how does it help you to invite an Apple or somebody else to come and build in your factories?
Yeah, as I said, the manufacturing in the chips are all based on, the nanometer is basically the distance between two transistors. Okay, in simple ways, when someone says, oh, I have a 10 nanometer and a 2 nanometer, and now we're getting even less than nanometer, which is called angstroms, which is even smaller than a nanometer, okay? Now, just to give you what a nanometer is, 1 nanometer is like I think your tip of your hair is 10,000 nanometer, by the way. Like, just your tip of your hair, right? So, the shorter the distance is, the closer the distance is, the more transistors you can add on a chip. It's a simple equation that you're trying to do. Now, for leading edge semiconductors, which is 3 nanometer or 7 nanometer and below, there is only 2 manufacturers in the world, TSMC and Intel. There's no one else. Now, for trailing nodes, which is 10 nanometer, 12 nanometer, 14 nanometer, 28 nanometer, India is launching, Tatas are doing 28 nanometer in India. There is quite a lot of players in it. Okay, and where is this 28 nanometer used? Like you go to your car, your controllers on your windshield, your controllers on your wiper, your small memory controller, the switch on this light somewhere will have a controller. So all of those are 28 nanometers. You're not running AI models on it as of now. Okay, but your laptop requires AI models to be run on it, requires an operating system to be run on it. That's the leading edge semiconductors that you'll have there.
One last question on the dark side, and then I have some fun questions for you from our students. Now, while there's a lot of positive story around AI and how it will change the world, there are also concerns about AI, deepfakes, job losses, a lot of it, right? Should we be worried?
Yeah, absolutely be worried, right? And yeah, as someone in technology, saying you not to be worried is not the right thing to do, because I think now what happens is like your trust factor is so high. Like I saw this on Instagram and I think it's true. It's the same thing with chat sometimes with ChatGPT or with any of the AI tools that you use. like ask it 3 more times, not because it's inaccurate, it's a point of view with the question that you're asking, right? So an AI is intelligent, but it needs to know context. And sometimes you clarifying in few different ways and saying, hey, I also have this thing, and therefore I'm asking you this question is important, okay? So, trust but verify, I think is the key method that's there. And then job losses and some of those aspects, I think is like, there is going to be job disruption, let's just put it that way. And there will be shifts in the society in terms of what, like, simple thing I'll give you, like coding today, there's many companies that 60, 70, 80% of code is easily done by AI. So if your job was primarily coding, then you will have to go reskill yourself to go do something new, okay? But there's also concepts where they think like productivity and use of AI will be so pervasive, so all around everywhere, that many of you need not work. You've heard the concept of universal basic income, right? So there is thinking around like what happens if your productivity is so high, your GDP is so high, and the population need not work. So the government needs to think about UBI at some stage where they'll pay you to do other things for the society, okay? So I think disruption is there, and I think whether it's the dark side of any technology, even the internet's got a dark side. So any of those areas, I think we should always have caution on that.
Awesome. So now some really short and crisp answers and questions by our students. What's one area of AI you think is still wide open for innovation in India?
I think all. Right? Because it's not like, we are so early in the cycle. Go after all of it. Wherever there's data and you can go make a difference to a customer's usage, go for it.
And I would like to go deep into it.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear applications of AI in healthcare, in education, in finance. Do you want to elaborate a couple of them across industries?
Sure. I mean, education is my favorite, topic, because I still feel like we learn, forget about Masters Union, but generally we learn everywhere like I learned 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Same way, right? You memorize, you by heart, you learn subjects, then you come, you score, and then success is done, right? And even private schools and schools that can afford, technology is considered like, if a kid has opened his laptop and sitting on it, I don't think the parents think that they're studying. Right? They think, what are you watching in your laptop? Or what are you playing in your thing? Right? But if they put 5 books and they're sleeping also inside it, it's fine. They're studying. Yeah. Right? It's that mindset that I think needs to change. So sectors like education, I mean, think about rural education, lack of teachers. How do you get the best teachers to go and talk? Local language, they don't get expertise to come to Masters Union. How do kids in remote villages and remote areas without access of infrastructure like this learn, right? So it can redefine the way learning is in India, and to me, I think that's one of the biggest disruptions that AI can do. Just change the way kids learn.
If you were 18 today, what would you learn to prepare for the AI-driven future?
If I was 18 today, I don't think I would have spent so many years of my life just checking the boxes. You know what I mean? Like I would have done things, learned by doing, which is what your motto is. I think we did less doing and we did more learning.
Yeah.
So I would have probably jumped into and not done so many years of academic excellence. I would have done work more, I guess. So apply more. I think that's what I would do, and I would also have some fun in life, to be honest. I think we take all of this too seriously in those days. Like we had to study, we had to get our marks. We had less opportunities for fun too, by the way. So I think I would make good friendships, good relationships, and have some fun in life too.
Absolutely. If you had to sum up the role of AI in India's future in 2 sentences, what would that be?
In 2 sentences, okay. I think it's transformative, and it has societal scale-based impact for our country. So it's probably the most significant change that we have ever seen post-independence. Right?
Okay, so
I think it's as big as that if you think about it.
So even bigger than the internet.
Even bigger than the internet. Internet was nothing. Internet was I can do it and it's not going to change anything. right? Like, oh yeah, once in a way I can see Facebook, once in a way I can do chat, once in a way I can do this. But every day I go sell my pani puri and I'm fine.
Yeah.
But this technology, every day you'll not be able to sell pani puri, right? Something's going to change dramatically around you. So one of the most significant impacts that we can see.
And last one, what's something you wish every young person in India knew about AI that they may not yet realize?
It's not as complicated as what we think. Okay, I think everyone gets lost in this, that code, this code, GPT, technology, like 20 jargons they'll throw at you. It's in the most essential thing is think about you being surrounded by the most intelligent experts in whatever field you choose. You want to go do a gaming, great. You have the best gamers around you, the best game developers around you. What would you do with that intelligence is the foundational question of AI. Okay, so the minute you can crack that, like what do I do with intelligence that is accessible to me? Like imagine you're starting a company and you're able to hire the best of anybody. That's what AI is going to do. What do we do with the best of anybody is what we all need to think.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Santhosh.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I learned a lot about AI today, and I'm sure my students did. Let's open the floor to questions. I'm sure they have a lot of follow-up questions. We can start with you.
So is Intel targeting the mobile industry, or they are playing safe with the PC only?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. So we kind of missed probably the mobile wave, and you can also say okay, GPU is too early, but we kind of missed those two big technology changes, right? Like, and the key question is why did we miss it, right? We missed it because if you look at mobile, it kind of said like for a small form factor, I have to focus on power and I can compromise on performance, okay? And Intel, when it started off, was like, nope, I want to lead in performance absolutely, right? That's why, all our PC and servers and all of that that's built in is always like performance first, right? And we missed the power. And that's where ARM came in with an architecture that said, okay, I can tweak performance a little bit, but I'm going to give you power as an efficiency in a smaller package. So that was a disruption to what x86, which is our architecture that is in use, okay? So we kind of missed that particular wave of innovation, but in technology, you'll also realize that when you miss, you're not actually missing. You'll go down the line and catch up at some stage, right? Where it evolves to the next. Like for example, now I don't know what the next version of a phone would be, right? Like you can see Meta doing it on the glasses. Some of you may invent something that is even bigger than that, right? With change. So I think there's always a point where you'll go catch up or get on to the next wave. GPU is the same front. Initially, everybody ran on the GPU, but now they're like, okay, I can't afford to have GPUs everywhere because it's too big, consumes too much power. I need to go and start to run smaller models off a CPU somewhere, right? So that becomes an opportunity. So I just think there'll be waves where you'll miss, but in semiconductors, the hardest part is you miss one wave, the next one will take a long time for you to catch up.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like I told you 5 years to build a factory. So you can't catch up till you invent the next thing. So that cycle is harder, longer.
Okay, so is Intel skipping mobiles, and are they targeting glasses or any other form?
Yeah, I think it's not about skipping mobiles. We still have products that are into it. But if you take handsets today, okay, the dominating two handsets in the world are what? Three probably. Is Apple, Samsung, and Huawei. Okay, so if you go take that phone market, these three brands is probably 95% of the sale. Okay, and if you go look at the profit margin, two brands will probably take 85% of the profit margin. So at some point in time in your studies you learned there's no point entering a market that there's no monetization available unless you're disrupting that market in a different way. Now, if AI comes in, you need more powerful chips in a smaller form factor that runs off your phone infrastructure, that goes and powers your TV, then yes, we will have an opportunity there, right? But not in the existing market space. Make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, please.
So with the ever-emerging world of technologies, there is a massive production and trial and errors that's happening in the world of artificial intelligence. Considering the fact that it also demands a lot of energy, which gets emerged into the environment, we should also be considering the sustainable factor. So if we are into the world of artificial intelligence, developing AI in a long run might demand a lot of sustainable issues. So how does Intel or any other tech company takes care of sustainable development and long-term goals instead of just innovation?
Yeah, so it's a huge challenge, right? Because if you look at all the data centers, it consumes a lot of power. And now if you look at the US, I think it's growing exponentially with all the, OpenAI just said 6 gigawatts and 10 gigawatts, and it's massive amount of power as a challenge, right? So on one element, I think we'll start to think like, okay, more and more of AI means we have a sustainability and a power challenge that's there, and that is a part that I think we need to keep working on. Where how do you lower power? What are the different cooling technologies? How do you build a cyclic environment system where you're trying to cool as well as not consume too much of these resources? On the other hand, there is also belief that AI will solve some of these big problems in a very different way, right? Like for example, we haven't unlocked like nuclear, like a safe nuclear reaction to go manage through the power requirements, right? Nuclear can be a solution to have a sustainable power solution, right? Green energy, which we're already using, like India's got 50 gigawatts of green power that we're trying to go generate through solar panels, is another area that we're trying to go bring sustainable energy for. So as much as you innovate and make products low power consumption, I think the other side is that AI will probably go solve some of these ways that we have an intelligence problem to solve. Like climate change power is an intelligence problem, right? Someone can crack it at a lower piece. And that's the belief that AI will help solve some of these as we go forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi Santhosh,
Hi.
I'm Dhruv.
Hi.
So my question is that you mentioned that innovation is super important at this point. How do you ensure that your team is actually in a scenario where they're able to evolve, given that Google led this era from attention is all you need times that article, but now they're far behind in many areas. So like you said, one wrong move can take you a decade behind. How do you ensure that at Intel?
I think in technology you learn, especially in the semiconductor cycle, that sometimes you'll have to stay the course directionally where you're trying to go and do, right? Like what's the course that we are on? Moore's law is the course. Like if you're focused on the fact that you want to keep doubling the number of transistors on a chip in every 18 months and you want to go and challenge physics to go make that happen, and you may slip one time, but you may get it right the next amount of time, you got to stay the course. Like you got to know what the vision is, right? Don't let the speed bumps on the journey make you take a detour, okay? Let the speed bumps help you go and steer your company back into track. And I think that's the key that you learn, in the technology race, right? Companies that don't go adapt to those speed bumps are the ones that fall off a cliff. Right? But you can't say I'm going to have a ride with no speed bumps. We were lucky, we were 5 decades of absolutely, being complete market leaders. Like our market share was 98% and 95% for 5 decades. We didn't even know what competition was, right? In many areas. But you can really see that one change will completely go change the game. Like Nvidia is a $4 trillion company today, right? Yeah. And they were hardly $5 billion company 10 years ago. So change is something that will happen rapidly under you, but don't let the speed bumps alter. Stay the course. The course is go and advance Moore's law, and I think you'll be successful. That's what I keep telling the team as well. Like don't lose sight with these bumps.
And are there any specific qualities that people who are entering the technology world today should possess beyond the typical hard skills?
I think resilience is an important aspect that you need to have. Like I always use the word grit with my team, right? Like if you don't have passion and perseverance with a little bit of jugaad, then you need that hustle to go make that happen. That is key in technology, right? Like you need passion because you got to believe, you got to have the hunger. Like how do I solve? If you give up, this is not the place, right, that you need to be in. And then persevere. Like you will fail a million times in technology. Like there's a thing called yield in semiconductors, which means when you develop a chip, how many of those chips in a single die is nothing but a round kind of plate. That's what does, chips are cut out of it. How many of those are going to be functional, okay? Now, when you start off, it's probably 10% of those are going to be functional, and each of those dies are $100,000 product. Okay, so imagine you get only 10% out of 100,000 investment that you're having. You'll be like, oh my God, I should just give up and not spend. But you keep at it. You keep at it till you get to 90%, 80% yields, and then you start to monetize it. So that's what I would say. Keep grit anywhere that you go. Thanks.
Okay, one last question. You want to pick?
Your choice.
Okay, at the last row, please.
As at one point you said that you didn't know what competition was, right?
Yeah.
So now with the rising competition in your market, the way to stand out is innovation, right? So you personally, how do you personally evaluate that is innovating faster?
Yeah, I think the key for us, any form of market and product that you're in, you will know you're innovating when you're closest to your customers. Okay, who are you building these products for? I think is the most important part that you do. And sometimes what happens is good companies go further away from customers, and they start to be in their boardrooms and their internal ping, and they don't touch what's happening with the customer base, right? So I think innovation closest happens when you're closest to your target audience, to your market, and then figure out how their needs are evolving and changing, right? So that to me is the most important measure of knowing that you're innovating. Like closest to your customers, how are their needs shifting? I mean, to give you a simple example, like when we were initially the data centers were all in-house. Everybody bought big servers, everybody put it in their infrastructure, and they started building, data centers inside their four walls. Then cloud computing happened. Okay, and cloud computing is what? It just said, don't buy servers. I'll just put everything in one place and we'll share. We'll rent it out as a service model, right? And it just disrupted the way traditional data centers were starting to get built and cloud evolved, right? But what was the inherent need the customers had? Inherent need the customers had was so much capital to keep refreshing based on technology. I just need some sort of a electricity bill type of model to buy. That was the inherent need. You'd stay close to the customer, you would have known that inherent need, right? And you would have started to build on it. So most important is that stay close to your customer. That's when you know you're innovating.
Okay, we've already hit the hard stop, so a huge round of thank you.
Thank you.
To Santhosh. Anything you want to share with the students?
No, I would just say as much as AI is, is scary and, most of you are thinking of uncertainty, it is an exciting opportunity. Okay, like view from that lens of opportunity. There is so many things you can go and build and do that would have never happened in a world without AI. Okay, so embrace it, learn it, adapt it, and go take risks. Like do 5 things, go build, go do something wonderful, as our founders used to say. Okay,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.